founder of Choose to Love Foundation. Her son was killed during the horrible massacre at Sandy Hook in December of 2012, and Scarlett Lewis was inspired to create the foundation and spread her work, her message, which you'll hear tonight. She lives in Connecticut on a small farm with her other son. She's been a finance person, an investment banker as such, and she has a BS from, where is that, Scarlett? Boston? Or?
Boston University.
Boston University. It's just wonderful that she could come and join us tonight. We know it's a tough topic. These are delicate times, especially in this era. And as she noted, as we note every day, ours is a real open campus. May it always be safe and open. I give you Scarlett Lewis.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. I appreciate it. So my name is Scarlett Lewis, and I am the founder of the Jessie Lewis Choose Love Foundation, named after my son, so a legacy foundation, Jessie, who was murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but mostly I'm going to focus on everything that I've learned from that event. And I'm going to talk about my 15-year-old son, who was 12 at the time, Jessie's older brother, and what he's done and what he's learned. I think that, and I want you to go here with me, I'm not focusing on the event. I'm going to focus on the growth that we've had. Because I found that, when hard things happen to us, when we experience pain, that's when we grow, right, as human beings. So when everything's going great and we're happy and everything's fine, there's no reason to grow. There's no reason we're not uncomfortable, right? But it's in the times when we suffer. It's in the times when we feel uncomfortable that we grow. And I think that sometimes we try to avoid feeling uncomfortable, try to avoid feeling pain, which is understandable. But tonight, I want you guys to kind of go there with me just a little bit. So lean into what I'm talking about, even if it makes you feel a little uncomfortable, and acknowledge in yourself, that's when you grow as a human being. And I got to tell you, I lost Jessie 2 3/4 years ago, but it was through that experience that I have grown immensely as a person. The things that I've done they mind-boggle me. I have introduced legislation into the U.S. Senate. I never really wanted to do that, but I found a need and was able to. I've traveled the world spreading Jessie's message all over the world and back and forth across the United States, spreading this message that I'm going to be giving to you tonight. So I'm going to start with the event. On December 14th, 2012, an angry young man shot his way through the glass doors of Sandy Hook Elementary and proceeded to gun down 20 first graders in 2 first grade classrooms and 6 teachers and administrators. It was one of the worst school shootings in U.S. history. I start with that because I want to talk about Jessie's actions that day. Because when the gunman came into Jessie's room, Jessie was instrumental in saving 9 of his classmates. Jessie's 6 years old. It's amazing when I see six-year-old kids, I think, wow, they're so young. How could he have been so brave? But he stood up to the gunman and he yelled for his friends to run. and he refused to leave his teacher's side. So that's incredible bravery. And I tell you that for a reason, which I'm going to come back to. This is actually the last time that I saw Jesse. This is his last picture. And it was 2 mornings before I had walked him out to meet his dad, and he was taking him to school. And so I'm always running late. So I gave him a hug and said, get off to school. And I turned around and I realized that he had etched, I don't know if you can actually see this, but he had etched with his little fingernail in the frost on the car, "I love you." And then he put little hearts on my windows. And I said, you know when you have those moments in life, or you guys, sometimes, you have to be present, but there are those moments in life when you think, wow, this is what it's all about. And I had one of those then. And I just completely slowed down. I ran inside. I said, you don't move. I'm going to take a picture of this message. I ran inside, got my phone, came back out, positioned him in front of his message, took a picture, and then sent him on his way. And that was the last time that I saw him. But thank goodness, and we're going to talk a little bit about presence, being present, that I was. And I have a picture now of my goodbye message, which is a blessing. So Jesse's actions resulted in him being eulogized on the cover of the Daily News. It says 6, but he was actually instrumental in saving 9 lives. And I talk about that because that's the true definition of courage, right? I think we think sometimes about courage and what we see in the media. It's, tough guys and Rambo type things. I'm actually aging myself when I say that. But that's not courage. Courage is something that we all have within us. We all, every single person in this room, have the same courage that Jesse has within us, right? We just have to acknowledge it. It's the courage to be kind and gentle. It's the courage to make the right choice. It's the courage to be compassionate. That's real courage. And I'd like for you to think about that definition. It's actually the courage to lay down your life for someone. It's not the absence of fear, but it's courage in the face of fear. And we all have that. And we're all courageous beings. And you make courageous decisions every single day when you stop to do something that maybe makes you a little uncomfortable. That's courage. So like I told you, this painful, terrible tragedy that happened to me, I allowed it to let me expand as a person. So we had incredible opportunities to meet people. President Obama met with me about the foundation, and actually his sister's now sitting on my board. So allowing the pain to provide opportunities is I think that's the theme for tonight. There's JT peeking around the corner with the Dalai Lama. He wasn't excited to meet him, he wasn't as excited as I was. But I want to talk just a second about Jesse, because that's why I'm here. It's the great dichotomy of my life. So I have this incredible message that Jesse left for me to spread, the formula for choosing love in any situation. And I feel so blessed to have this as my personal mission, but it's never far from my mind that it is only because Jesse was murdered in his school. And so it's kind of a dichotomy for me. But Jesse was born at 11 pounds. He was 11 pounds when he was born. So that's a big baby. I don't know how much you guys weighed, but I'm not sure if there are any 11 pounders. So Jesse had this larger than life kind of persona his entire life, right? He was loud from the very beginning, and his voice just reverberated off of the walls, and his energy was just contagious, and he just ran and yelled and you can imagine his older brother was not always too happy about that. So we were constantly playing the quiet game so JT could have some quiet time, because JT's kind of the opposite. So when Jesse died, when he was 6, JT was 12. And I'm going to talk about him in a minute. So we have a farm, and we have horses and chickens and tons of dogs. And so Jesse, this is a picture of Jesse on his 6th birthday, his last birthday on Earth. And he's riding JT's horse, Apache. And he was so happy to have all of his little friends over for a pony ride. Jesse's favorite toys were little toy soldiers and little ducks. So that was kind of like the dichotomy to his personality, right? So here he is in the bathtub, and he would just spend hours lining up these little toy soldiers. And my friend gave him an army helmet. So he wore this thing all the time. He felt like he was a little soldier. So he would come home from school, kick off his school shoes. He would put on these boots that had camo, but they were like winter boots. But he'd put them on anyway, no matter what the season, and he'd strap on that helmet. He wanted to go to school in the helmet, but I wouldn't let him. But he did sleep in the helmet. So he would go around, he'd walk around with water guns, and he would, be our little protector on the farm. So that was really his personality. And actually, Jesse, I buried him in that helmet. So I, along with everyone else in the world, asked myself, how could something like this happen? How does something like this happen? And by the way, it's happened quite a few times since then. And I felt like in my head, I came up with my own theory. And I thought that it was it was anger. So it was an angry young man that shot his way through the glass doors. And I felt like if he had had the ability to control his emotions, if he was taught that at home or in school, this whole thing might not have happened, right? So I realized the amazing thing is, so he was angry, right? He'd probably been angry for a long time. And I pictured him as a little boy having this angry thought. And then we know that one thought now, one angry thought changes the wiring in our brains. Did you guys know that? Through neuroscience. And if you have repeated angry thoughts, and some anger is good because anger makes us do stuff, right? It makes us get up and be active. But prolonged anger is not so good. And it's bad for our health. It's bad physically for us, mentally, and emotionally. And I saw him as a little boy having an angry thought without the tools or nurturing environment to deal with that thought. And then he continued to have these angry thoughts. And what happened in his brain was that the neural pathways for anger started strengthening and thickening, and then they became highways. And then it became like a reflexive thought of anger. And he didn't know that he wasn't those angry thoughts, right? Because we are not our thoughts. That's not who we are. We are above and beyond that. And our thoughts, they come and go, right? We are something that doesn't change, but our thoughts change constantly. Actually, every single one of you has an average of 60,000 thoughts a day. Does that surprise you? It doesn't really surprise me because sometimes I have these inane thoughts that run through my head or words to a song. Do you guys do that? 60,000 thoughts. And the majority, and I want you guys to do something for me. I want you to think about this. And I want you to share with each other when you leave. But the majority of those thoughts that you have on a daily basis, maybe a little bit less for you guys because you're here, but some of those thoughts you had yesterday and a year before. And some of those thoughts don't serve you. Some of them are not productive, right? And so I'm going to challenge you to, and this is what I got up and I spoke at Jesse's funeral. And I said, this whole thing started with an angry thought, and an angry thought can be changed. So I asked everybody to actively change one angry thought a day into a loving thought. And I had people contact me from all over telling me that doing that one thing per day changed their life. So I want you guys to try that out. And let me know, because you can contact me on the website. I want to know if that works. So to do that, you begin to think about what you're thinking about, which probably you guys don't a whole lot, and then try to choose a loving thought over an angry thought. So I learned the true meaning of compassion on December 14th by how the world reacted. And I call that day the world's greatest day of compassion. Because I think how most people learn compassion, how it's taught, is that compassion is empathy, right? Is that what you've heard? So empathy is identifying with someone's pain, right? And that actually is painful. When you are identifying with my pain, how are you feeling? Not good, right? Sad, angry, it doesn't feel good. And so if we teach compassion as empathy, we're going to stop there, pretty much, right? Because that doesn't feel too good. And you know what? I'm busy. I'm a student. I have classes. I've got a test tomorrow. I was a single mom. I had a full-time job. I just don't have time to feel bad like that. But what we miss out on is the second component of compassion. That's the action component. That's when you go the next step. Actively do something to help ease another's pain. And that's when the benefit of compassion comes back to you, because all of the love and energy that you give out comes back. So that's what we saw on December 14th, with the world reaching out to us and making handmade gifts. 3/4 of the cards that we got were from children, because they somehow know this. And they may lose this in the distractions of life. But they know that reaching out and being compassionate to somebody else does something that makes them feel good. And it provides healing for them as well. So here is the message that I found that Jesse wrote a few days before he died, and I found after he died. He wrote 3 words: nurturing, healing, love, on our kitchen chalkboard. Now, people say, oh, did you walk around saying nurturing, healing, love? It's like, no, I didn't. I have no idea where he got that. Well, I do. I have an idea. I feel like he had a spiritual awareness that he was not going to be here for very much longer. And he wanted to leave a message of comfort for his family and friends, but he also wanted to leave a message of inspiration for the world. And so these words aren't in the vernacular of a 6-year-old. A 6-year-old doesn't know. They may know love, but they don't know nurturing. They may know healing, but it's not in their vernacular. They don't say it every day. So the words are obviously phonetically spelled, because he was just learning to write. He was in 1st grade. But those 3 words are in the definition of compassion across all cultures. And when you break down the meaning to those 3 words, nurturing means loving kindness and gratitude. Healing literally means forgiveness. And love is compassion in action. And when you practice those 3 character values and have the courage to do it, you are choosing love. So the choose love formula is gratitude plus forgiveness plus compassion in action. And I'm going to talk about each one of those. But before I do, I want to show you this. This is so cool. So there's something called precognitive drawing, which I didn't know about before Jesse died. But evidently, it's a science, and people study drawings that children make, and they show how they're going to die. So this came back in Jesse's personal belongings in a box, and we call it the angel and the bad man, right? So clearly this is the angel, and this is the bad man. Now this is not like anything Jesse had ever drawn before, and this is exactly how he died, facing the shooter. But if you look a little bit closer, and by the way, if you guys see anything in this picture, I'd love to know. Come up and tell me afterwards, because my audiences are the ones that pick up everything in this picture that is really cool. So somebody said, oh my God, after. They said, did you realize that he's in the shape of a bullet? And that's what took him to heaven. And I said, no, I didn't. Oh my God, did you realize that the angel is in the shape of a 14? What's the significance? December 14th, oh yeah, oh my God. And so, Yeah, I'm a little dense sometimes. So then, if you look at the shooter's head a little bit more closely, you'll see that there is like almost a demon type figure in the back of the head. So there's like a black cloak, 2 black blunted wings, a little face looking over towards Jesse. There's actually even a ball cap. He's holding a gun. And there's a phallic symbol that's screwing down into the head. That actually a phallic symbol in medieval times denotes evil, I believe. But what's even more amazing is that, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but in front of this figure is an angelic figure. If you can see this, and it's not in pencil mark, this is pretty cool. There's the face, there's a halo, and there's a gown, and there's a person, angel, Mother Mary, standing like this in front. So you can read that many ways. If you're religious, you say, oh, well, even though, you know, the devil was present, obviously, God's always with us as well. If you're not religious, you can say, well, he was making a bad choice, but a good choice is always just one choice away, right? They're always there and present within us. Both, good and evil, in all of us, and me too. We need to acknowledge that. This is Jesse. Jesse, I paint. I'm an artist, and Jesse is obviously an artist too. And this is his last painting. And this he painted about a month before he died. And this is, I didn't know this either. I was just showing this to somebody. They said, oh my God, this is a three-dimensional door. And this is exactly how he died, right? So this is kind of like a violent, bloody death, right? But this is the journey. And then the green is the color of love, or the color of the heart chakra. And then there's gold behind it, almost kind of like the golden gates of heaven, or consciousness, or whatever you think that they go to. Really cool. Do you guys think that that's cool? Yeah. You know what? It's very comforting to me, because to me, this shows that he had some kind of spiritual awareness, right? And I believe that he continues to exist. I believe that he helps me. I believe he's helping me make this talk right now. So JT was 12 years old at the time when his brother died. And JT texted me that day, and he said, Mom, because you guys knew what was going on way before we did. We were told, oh, you know, they're sweeping the school, well, you know, we're finding kids, and so just hang tight. We weren't told till about 4 o'clock that afternoon. I don't know when you guys found out, but it was hours before. So JT, who was in school, texted and said, Mom, can I come wait with you at the firehouse? This is where everybody was reunited. And I said, oh, sure, because when they find Jesse, he's gonna want his bigger brother. We might go out to dinner. Yeah, absolutely. So JT was right there. And we still talk about, in our support groups, the firehouse. It was a very traumatic time, as you can imagine. Not being told anything, not being told the truth, maybe. And JT was right there in the middle of all of it. The army men, helicopters, ambulances going in and out, all of it. So anyway, it was a tough time for him. And despite all of our messages and everything that we were getting from Jesse, he was having a hard time. So was I. And so it was about a month after, and he really hadn't gone back to school. Like scattered. He was on he had a ski thing, so he would go like on Fridays. But then I would go in and I'd say, do you want to go to school today? At like 6 o'clock in the morning, and he'd go, no. And I'd say, okay. Because I sent one kid to school and he didn't come home, I'm not gonna force him. So I really wasn't in a great position either. And I called the school and I said, he's not going to school, can you help me? And they said, we're all traumatized. What do you want from us? So we were really alone. JT, and he's not gonna, don't repeat this out of this room, he's not gonna want anybody to know, but he punched a hole in his wall. He was really angry. I'm sure that you can understand. I was angry too. I mean, how could something like this happen? So I didn't know what to do. And we had this incredible experience where orphan genocide survivors from Rwanda, who had heard about the tragedy at Sandy Hook, wanted to reach out to JT and talk about what they had been through. And so we set up this Skype in his bedroom, hole behind him in the wall, And these two beautiful orphan genocide survivors came on the screen with an interpreter in the middle, and they said, JT, we heard about what happened to your brother in Sandy Hook, all the way over here in Rwanda, and we just wanted to tell you that we're so sorry, but we wanted you to know that you're gonna be okay and you're gonna feel joy again. I'll never forget them saying that, because I'm standing there going, okay, all right, these guys, they have legitimacy, right? They've been through probably something worse than we have, and they're saying we're gonna be okay and feel joy again. So I believe them. So they went through and they talked about their experience of having their neighbors that they lived next to their whole life break down the wall to their house, murder their families by machete in front of them. Chantel was 8 years old, so she's telling us this. She said they tried to murder me. They grabbed me by the hair, they slit my throat, and they buried me in a shallow grave with my parents and my brothers and sisters, and left me there. And she said I had to hide for several days because they had lists, and they were making sure that everyone was dead. And she said when they left, I clawed my way out and I found my way into an orphanage. And she said it was after my physical wounds started healing that I started feeling this profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the walls that were providing me protection, gratitude for the little amount of food I was getting, gratitude for the human kindness that was being given to me. She said then that gratitude kind of made me strong enough to realize that I had to forgive those people that had murdered my family, because if I didn't, I would be going down the same path of anger and destruction that they had gone down. And she said once I made the decision to forgive, then it gave me the strength to look back, like I was talking about, lean in a little bit to the suffering and find meaning and use my experience to help other people, like I'm doing with you right now, JT. And so the boy had a slightly different scenario. He and his family escaped into the hills, and they ate grass for 3 months, watching the destruction of their neighborhoods. And his mother died of starvation. He had some other deaths in his family. When he came home, it all fell to him. But he loved school so much, even though he'd never be anything but a subsistence farmer with no electricity and no water, that he walked down a mountain for 2 hours one way, walked back up just to go to school, but he'd never have higher education. So JT and I, we go back to our chairs that we've kind of just been sitting in for a month, facing each other, and we started listing what we had to be grateful for. And you know what? We found that it was quite a lot. We had our family, we had our neighbors delivering more meals to our door every night. We had our farm and our aminals, as Jesse called them. We had each other. And then we made the conscious decision to forgive Adam Lanza, the man who murdered Jesse, because we knew that if we didn't do that, that we would be maybe stuck in this kind of pit of anguish that we were in, and we might never get out of it. And forgiveness has really been the key to my resilience and the reason that I'm up here, and I'm going to talk just a little bit more about that in a minute. And then he started writing in his journal, which he never does, by the way. And I said, what are you writing? And he said, and this is a quote, I'll never forget it, those kids reached out to me in love, and I'm going to reach back out to them, and I'm going to start raising money for them to go to university. So he went back to school the next day by himself and started a fundraising campaign. And within a couple of months, he Skyped back to that same group and announced to a woman named Betty that he had raised enough money to put her through 1 year of university in Rwanda, which was, I think, $1,400, plus an additional $400 because she was an orphan. So now the orphans live in family units, and they live in big family units. She had 9 people, and they couldn't survive without her $400 income that year. So he found that out, and he raised $2,000, and then he made the commitment to raise money for her additional 3 years, which he's done now. And I talk about that because JT healed himself. He learned from those beautiful orphan genocide survivors the healing equation, which was being grateful for what you have, forgiving, and then actively doing something to help ease another's pain, finding meaning in your suffering and reaching out and helping someone. JT, by following what the orphan genocide survivor said, which happens to be the exact same thing that Jesse wrote on our kitchen chalkboard, nurturing, healing, love, he has healed himself, or he's healing himself, because healing is a lifelong journey, right? But he's doing better than he ever has, and he continues in his mission. Here's his band here, newtownhelpsrwanda.org, and he continues in his mission. He's helped former children soldiers build self-sustaining fish ponds in Uganda. He's helped countless kids that have been through terrible traumas in the US. And so this is what he'll do for the rest of his life. And this is what I'll do for the rest of my life. It's go around sharing Jesse's message of healing. This is his website. So this is the equation, the healing equation. Gratitude plus forgiveness plus service to others equals choosing love. I want to talk about forgiveness before I run out of time. So forgiveness is something that, I mean, what did I know about forgiveness on December 13th? I don't know. I went to church, and I graduated from college, and you know what? I knew nothing about forgiveness. I mean, I believe that you forgive so that you're forgiven, right? And that you should forgive. And so that's kind of what I went into this whole experience knowing. But what I found out myself was that forgiveness is really for yourself. Forgiveness is empowering. It brings your personal power back. So I was giving a talk to a group of at-risk youth, right? And they were a tough crowd. And so I'm up here talking about forgiveness, and one of the guys in the back raised his hand and said, "What is forgiveness?" And you know how when you have that moment when you're like, I can't believe you're up here talking about forgiveness, and you can't even think of a Webster definition. You should not be up here talking about forgiveness. You have no idea what you're talking about. I can't even, that type of stuff is going through my head. So I said, you know what? I'm going to have to describe what forgiveness is to me, and visually. I said, I felt like I was attached to the shooter with this umbilical cord that ran out from my side into his side. And all of my personal power was draining through it in the form of anger, right? Through this umbilical cord into him. And I was dragging him around with me everywhere I went. He was always in my mind. So we were attached like this. Do you feel that way sometimes about somebody who's, done something not nice to you, right? And you're kind of giving them a power over you by this prolonged anger. So I said, I felt like I was dragging him around everywhere, and forgiveness to me was just a decision, right? And it was a big set of scissors, and in saying I forgive, I snipped that cord. So I cut that cord to pain by forgiving. And so everybody was like, okay. The same guy raised his hand and said, how long did it take you to do that? And I said, that's an excellent question too, because even though I did it fairly quickly, forgiveness is a process. It's not just a choice, because you're going to get angry again, most likely. Like, I'm not just like, oh, yeah, everything's fine. I'm not going to be angry at the man who murdered my son anymore. No, I get angry. I get angry when I hear details of what happened. I get angry when I think about how terrified all those little kids must have been. I take a deep breath, take a step back, and I choose to forgive again. And I do that, not for him, but for me, because it empowers me. Another important thing was, in my process of forgiveness, was feeling in the very beginning that someone who could do something so heinous must have been in a tremendous amount of pain, right? And I knew that he had suffered, and I knew that he most likely had slipped through the cracks. And it turns out, when I looked back, that when I kind of studied his history, he had cried out for help, like a kid would do. Not like this, hi, I'm having difficulties, I think I need to go see a psychiatrist. Could you please make me an appointment when it's convenient for you? Not like that, but he had acted out In 5th grade, when he went to Sandy Hook Elementary, actually, he had written a book that he brought in, bound, ready to sell, called The Book of Granny. And that was about a witch who brought a broomstick into Sandy Hook Elementary, and the top of the broomstick opened, and it became a semi-automatic weapon and murdered children. So that's kind of like a kid calling out for help, right? And that was ignored. So here you have a kid that's calling out for help, and he's not getting the help that he needs. And so he became very angry, right? So I felt like, it's my personal belief that everyone is born a perfect child of God, right? And they're cultivated by their environment. And you guys are very blessed because you have this beautiful environment. But he did not receive nurturing, healing love. And he basically slipped through the cracks. So you know what? I feel compassion for him. I feel compassion for his pain, because to do something like that, he had to be in a tremendous amount of pain himself and feel incredibly disconnected, right? So that also helps me forgive him. Kind of going through my process there. Also, I believe that every single one of you, and I want you guys to think of this too, and I'm wrapping it up, has a purpose, right? And a purpose, a reason that you're here on earth, and it's really important. And every single person in here is so incredibly powerful. You can change the world, everyone in here. And I found my purpose in life through my personal tragedy. So it's kind of like this dichotomy. Like I have my purpose now, and it's to teach people how to choose love through Jesse's message. And I get letters from all around the world saying that it's changed their life and how happy they are, and it's all because my son was murdered. So it's this huge dichotomy. But I want you to think about what your purpose is on earth. And maybe think about what we talked about earlier, leaning into the pain and seeing if maybe that provides you any insight. JT doesn't look very happy here, does he? Because he had the day off, and I was going to prison to talk about Jesse's message. So these are convicted killers. They are gang members. They're addicts. And JT happened to have the day off, so I said, "Oh, JT, come with me." But it was actually one of the best days of our lives. It was amazing. All these guys had read the book that I wrote, Nurturing, Healing Love, no surprise. And so we were there to talk about it and to share our experience, to talk exactly the message that I gave to you guys tonight. And this is the message that I give to, slight change for kindergartners, but I mean all the way up. And I said the exact same thing to them that I'm saying to you about the formula for choosing love and how important it is, and about forgiveness, and about the true definition of compassion in action being the more important part. And every single one of these guys, at the end of 2 hours, dedicated their lives to choosing love. I didn't ask them to, because I won't ask you to either, because that's probably my weakness. I don't ask anything. But they wanted to, because you know what? They didn't know how before. And they didn't understand the true definition of forgiveness, or even what it meant. I mean, our society says, forgive and forget, right? Forgive and forget. Could I ever do that? Does that make that an immediate impossibility for me? Absolutely. And people even think that it means condoning what somebody did to you. Will I ever condone what Adam Lanza did to my son? Absolutely not. Do I hold him responsible for his actions? Absolutely. We're all responsible for our actions. It doesn't matter. Will I ever get an apology from him? No. Do you think he was sorry? Probably not. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. I'm forgiving for myself. He doesn't have to know. You never have to talk to the person that hurt you. You can. It would be nice if there was a reunion, but there's not always that. I forgive for myself. I could have let him ruin my life, right? I mean, if you heard that, oh, Sandy Hook mom curled up in her bed crying every day, you would be like, oh yeah, that's sad. Yeah, I can understand that, right? but I'm not giving him that power over me. Why would I? Why would I allow him two victims, an additional victim, and maybe JT watching me do that? No way. I'm going to take the power back by forgiving. It's really powerful. So choice, if I could boil my whole experience down to one word, it would be choice. I've learned how important this word is because we can't always choose what happens to us, right? I didn't choose this. I would never have chosen this. But I chose how I responded to this situation. And you can always, always choose how you respond. That's a quote by Viktor Frankl, and it's a great book, Man's Search for Meaning. Everybody should read that book, but it's really true. You can always choose how you respond. I want you guys to remember that, please. That means you can choose to forgive, and you can choose love. Two decisions that we make every morning. You should set the intention. This is what I do. When I get up, I set the intention to live my life in faith. Whatever you believe in, but you believe that everything is acting in your favor, right? Or you can believe that everybody's against you and everyone hates you. I don't know, it's just a choice. So I choose to believe that the universe is conspiring in my favor, and I'm going to live my life in faith. And all my decisions that I make from that point are very different than the decisions that I would make if I just chose arbitrarily, because it is a decision, to think that everyone was against me. I want you just to think about that, and maybe even try it out. Tomorrow morning, wake up, set the intention for the day to live your life in faith. See how your day goes. So, just to recap, the healing equation is gratitude plus forgiveness plus compassion, which includes the service part to others, the action component, equals healing and joy. And we can all choose love. So I'm going to open it up to questions now. If anybody has any questions, anything, you can ask me anything. Nothing's off limits.
Well, I guess my question is, what does the Choose Love Foundation exactly do besides you spreading the message of your son?
What does the Choose Love Foundation do? Excellent, excellent question. Thank you for asking that. So I felt that the killer in this situation did not have nurturing, healing love in his life, right? So I actually had a university professor come over. He analyzed Jesse's message, and I said, you know, I feel like it's my purpose to spread this, and I feel like kids really need this message. How do we get it into schools? And he said, it's called social and emotional learning. This is how you do it. So I did some research, and I found that there are great social and emotional learning programs out there. They teach moral awareness, emotional self-regulation, personal responsibility, great lessons, character value, but some of the programs are expensive, and the majority of schools can't afford them. And so what we're doing right now, and have almost finished doing, is we wrote our own. It's the Choose Love Enrichment Program, and we're going to have it online for free for all schools. Any teacher who's interested. I've been obsessed with this because this is what I feel like my mission is. So I've literally, like, we've spent the last year working on this, and we're almost done. We're just putting the finishing touches on pre-K through 12th grade. 9 through 12 is a really interesting program because it's 160 days in a school year. So it talks about the 4 character values that we focus on: courage, gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion in action, right? But there are 45 lessons on each, and they're 5 to 8 minutes. So you would do them, say, in an advisory period or a homeroom period, and they talk about all different aspects of learning what courage is and how you can practice it and all the benefits neuroscientifically and how it affects the brain when you act courageously. And we used all sorts of creative ways to teach these, from affirmations to quotes to inspiring profiles to poems to songs, because there's research that shows that when you teach a similar subject but in different ways, it changes the bell curve in the class and you get more geniuses. So, so I'll encourage Blair to look at that and to check it out when it's available. So thank you for asking that question.
Was there ever a point during your grieving process that you're still going through now that you felt like you couldn't take it anymore? The pressure, the depression, the anger, that you would just succumb to it and just give up?
That's a great question. Was there ever a point in my grieving process that I felt like giving up? Right? And absolutely. So I've hit rock bottom. And I think that was, I remember standing at Jesse's grave and the dirt was fresh. I was like visiting shortly after that. It was really cold outside. And I remember feeling so bad that I thought, I am going to die and I'm going to dissolve into dirt and I'm just gonna do it now. Like, I'm surprised that I'm still in one piece. That's how I felt. And I did feel, I still cry every day, by the way. I mean, I'm up here and I'm very strong now. I'm public speaking, which I've done for my whole career, which led me to be able to do this for you guys. But I still cry every day. You know, it's a process. I still miss Jesse. You know, I still have down times. I sometimes when I'm talking about what happened, I kind of hear myself talking as a third person and I hear what I'm saying, like, my son was murdered at Sandy Hook. And I have this third person kind of weird experience going, what did you just say? What is she saying? That can't be true. Can that be true? Could that have happened? And then I think, well, it must be, because you're standing up here in front of an audience and talking about it. That type of, you know, reality check. Because it's still so crazy, right, that something like that would happen. So yeah, I do struggle still. I suffer still, every day. But it's in finding meaning in my suffering. So I'm suffering for a reason, and I am trying to turn my personal tragedy into something that's meaningful. So giving meaning to Jesse's death and helping other people when I do it. And that's how I keep going. But it doesn't mean that I don't still suffer. I still cry every day. But my life has found meaning. And I have happiness too.
There's a question out there. There's someone over there. Someone over there.
How do you think you would have been able to cope if it wasn't for your faith?
Excellent question. How could I have coped without my faith? I don't know how I would have coped without my faith because I've been a very faithful person my entire life. And I knew before that, I believed before that when Jesse died, that he had gone to a better place, because that's my belief. I struggled with that, but I was never angry at God. People say, well, where was your God that day, right? I saw God all around. God didn't want that to happen, right? He could have stopped it, but that was something that we created here on earth, right? And I say, I take my part of the responsibility for what happened on that day to my son. I'll raise my hand because I haven't always been the most compassionate person, right? I really haven't. And I said before, we're very powerful people. I don't know how far-reaching some of my bad choices have been. So I take my part of the responsibility. Now, I am doing everything in my power to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And I fully expect everyone else to take their part of the responsibility as well. And for my faith, I say, you know, I struggled a little bit, for sure. But I never really asked why. I just kind of understood that it was something that we created here on earth that needed to be fixed, but that I felt God all around me the whole time through my faith. And I say now that I don't believe anymore. I know without a doubt for myself that that my faith has really empowered me to help me get through this. That was an excellent question, and thank you.
I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
You have a very particular focus. Do you also have any involvement in other kinds of programs focusing on, say, guns or security at school or mental health programs?
Yep, so that's a question that comes up about guns and school safety. There were a lot of families right off the bat that got involved in gun control right away. I remember watching them on TV thinking, oh my God, you know, you're just like reeling and in shock from what happened. And then there were families entering into this gun battle, because that's really what it is when you enter into that. Those families have received death threats and they've really put themselves out there. I saw that, and I thought, I'm thankful for their efforts, but I thought that, first of all, I couldn't be against anything. Not after what I'd been through. I wanted to be for something. And I wanted Jesse to be associated with something positive. I wanted, when people looked at Jesse's face, to associate him with something loving and kind, like choosing love. And I really felt like even if we did take away all the guns, there would still be the issue in our society, which is disconnection, I feel like, and anger, right? And so that was really what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to focus on more emotional health of children and teaching them how to regulate their emotions. Because every single school-related shooting that happens in our country, and by the way, we've had 130 since Sandy Hook Elementary, so we have one per week. We don't hear about all of them, but it's true. Every single one of those is preventable. And how is it preventable? By teaching kids social and emotional learning. That's my personal feeling. So, and so I started with Jesse's chalkboard message, the Choose Love equation, the Jesse Lewis Choose Love Foundation. And I'll tell you what, it was probably the best decision that I made in my life, because no one yet has come up to me and said, you know what, that was a really stupid idea. And this is why. And so everybody has resonated with that message. So it's a nice place for me to be too, especially, you know, continuing to heal from my tragedy.
You know, perhaps we could wrap it up here, but if you'd like to speak with Scarlett on the stage, please do. There are also books up here that you can purchase just by printing your name on a sheet, and I'll take care of it in the business office. You can take a look at the book if you're interested. But please come up and speak to Scarlett. And thank you for being here. And
I
thank
have one more thing. Can I just say one more thing? So I just want to wrap it up, but I have one more message that Jesse left. So the same day that I found the Nurturing Healing Love on the kitchen chalkboard, JT had come home with me. We were staying at my mom's, and he had gone into his room to get some, you know, really important stuff like, I don't know, video chargers and things like that. So he came up to me after that, and he said, so we'd been seeing like blinking lights and finding feathers and really cool things like that. And he said, Mom, you know how everybody's been getting messages from Jesse? And I said, yeah. And he said, I got a message. And I said, really, what was it? And he said, I found this note folded up on my desk. And Jesse had left this note for him. It says, have a lot of fun. And it's a very prophetic message, because whereas Jesse was bouncing off the walls and really loud and always having fun and always smiling, JT's not exactly like that in personality. I mean, he's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more serious. He kind of has to be cajoled into, smiling and having a good time. So this message left by his 6-year-old brother was really beautiful for him, but I felt like it was also great for all of us, because it's a great reminder that while we're practicing nurturing, healing love, we're here to have a lot of fun. Let's have a lot of fun while we're doing it. This little birdie in my head, when I'm doing things that maybe are a little bit difficult or uncomfortable for me, I always hear this little voice saying, it's Jesse's voice, Mom, have a lot of fun. And then I go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be having a lot of fun. And it really does change everything. So I wanted to leave you guys with that message.
Thank you.